Good evening, everyone, wherever you are joining us today. Cybersecurity Mentoring Group today is another celebration of International Women's Day, even though we did it on the 8th of March, and I was particular that I'm looking for women speakers because we've had men from January and February. So thankfully, I reached out to one of my old colleague, and she was generous to be present. Thank you so much, Ify, for being generous with your time for us today. All right. In case you are joining us for the first time, Cybersecurity Mentoring Group is a platform where we share, we learn, and we connect. So what we do essentially is that we bring in professionals that are experienced in the field to come share from their experience, something that we can learn for people who are new, and something we can learn for people who want to transition to cybersecurity. I'm trusting that you will take something away today from our engagement with Ify. Before we go into the engagement proper, maybe this will be the last time I will announce it, but we made a publication which I think you will find useful as a cybersecurity professional, or you are trying to transition into the field. We looked at different jobs in the industry that were published between January and October 2024. We looked at them across Nigeria, Canada, United Kingdom, and United States. Well, essentially what we're looking for, what are the things that employers are looking for? The skills, the competencies, and the certifications that employers are looking for. So we compile all of those into some kind of intelligence that you can look at, and you can actually use that to plan your next job interview. We also identify the top cybersecurity certifications that employers are also looking for. Then the top roles, the roles that really came out top in terms of the number of times we found them on different adverts. And we identified 25 of them, and we selected 5 of those roles, and we provided more context in terms of the security skills, competencies, both technical or functional and non-functional skills that are required for those roles. So you can look at it on our LinkedIn page, and I believe that you will get something that can help you to deepen your knowledge in the field. The second item on the screen is the common vulnerability exposure for 2024. Over 40,000 were published in the year 2024. And from that, cybersecurity professionals can look at them and see the most common vulnerabilities, and then be able to take action, maybe advise their development team to be aware of these vulnerabilities. I think so far, the last time I checked, for the first 2 months in 2025, over 7,000 have been published. And it's looking like this year will be more than last year. So vulnerabilities are increasing. And that's more job or more work for cybersecurity and IT professionals. The last information I have for you today is on the cybersecurity growth plan. We published this also in January. And again, this is the last week or the last program we're having for the quarter. And this is actually the last month for the quarter. So you can understand that if you have something like this to guide your preparation or your learning or your development in 2025, you can ask yourself the question, what did I do? What new course did I take? What certification did I plan to earn? What seminar or webinar did I attend? Or what skill did I improve in the month or in the quarter? And if you have not done so, quarter 2 is just by the corner, and you can actually plan your growth through this plan. I mentioned that if they ask you in an interview, how are you growing? If you tell them that you have a growth plan and you're able to share something like this, they would think you are serious, because you are, for you to have developed a plan. So I encourage you, it's also on their page, on the LinkedIn page, you can download them and modify, or just download it, look at how it's created, and put the courses or the topics you would like to study, and put it there and use it to track yourself. If you already have some certifications, they can help you to, plan for your CPE, because those are also mandatory for you to be able to keep those certifications. All right, going proper into the conversation today, if you're welcome. So one thing I didn't mention publicly was that Ify and I were in InterSwitch together, and we used to fight. So I was in risk, if he was in IT. And so before you guys joined, we're doing some aproko, and we're saying that those days we used to fight.
Yes.
Concerning risk, telling us to do this and that. And I guess it was days of not understanding how we could actually work together very well. So today, if you will be sharing some of those experiences and how you as a cybersecurity professional can actually make IT your body, because they really, really are your foundation. So the first thing we want to do is to get into Ify's background, professional background, in terms of Ify's journey from, as a professional, starting the journey, getting into the workplace, and then deciding to go into a technical area. How was that journey for you, Ify?
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Ify Onwurah. I'm so honored to be here. Thank you, Wale, for reaching out to me to do this. And yeah, even before you guys joined, like Wale said, we have been doing aproko, trying to catch up and all of that. So my background, I actually started in IT in 2013. So I came back fresh from the UK. I just finished in my master's. And sometime when I was in the UK, I'd seen one publication for like GT Bank, training school, intern, executive trainees. So I had applied and forgotten about it. And like barely 1 week after I came back from the UK, I got an invite that said, oh, come and do interview. So I went, I did interview, passed interviews, had some tests that were given. I passed everything basically. And then after that stage, you need to go into training school for 4 months. Then when the bank still used to do the executive training academies. So I went into that executive training academy, and for 4 months, we were just going through everything in the bank. You had to understand every single department in the bank and how it worked. So I was just telling Wale before you guys joined that during my training school, I was telling everybody that cared to listen that I wanted to be in corporate affairs. I had zero plans, zero intentions of being in IT. And the reason was simple. In spite of the fact that I read computer engineering as my first degree, and I also went for my master's in network planning management, I just didn't feel like IT was for me. So if you ask me, then I'll just say IT wasn't for me. So I was looking for corporate affairs role. I wanted, something simple or easy to do. Right. So the only prayer point is don't go to marketing. That was my only prayer point. Don't go to marketing. Maybe I was not praying right. I don't know. So I even went for an interview in training school for corporate affairs. Like I sat with the head of corporate affairs. She interviewed me. And so in my mind, I was like, okay, this is a done deal. I'm going to go to corporate affairs. So you can imagine my pain and my shock when the letter came on the night of our graduation, and I saw IT compliance technology in the letter. And I was telling Wale that I cried. I was so upset. I was like, why? I felt like marketing would have even been better for me for some weird reason. So I had no choice. It was in the bank, you go wherever you are sent. And it was at that year that was the first time that they started trying to push anybody that read anything remotely looking like tech, you had to go to the technology department. And it is good for me to mention here that one of the reasons why I actually also didn't want to do tech is because I also had that assumption that everybody would need me to learn how to code, and I didn't want to code. I didn't want to have anything to do with coding. I didn't like coding. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't understand it. That's even just the honest truth. I didn't understand it. So I didn't want to do it. So I go into the bank and I joined IT compliance. I was in GT Bank for 6 years. In that time, I did IT compliance for about 5 years, and then I moved to enterprise architecture. In IT compliance role, for the first 1 year, I'm not even going to pretend, I didn't understand so many things. But I remember that when I joined, one of the things that my then boss said to me was that, you know, you are in IT compliance role. This role is so great because you get to absorb what everybody is doing around you. So you had to know what everybody was doing to be able to check compliance. So I was basically learning on the job. And I won't pretend that it was easy. It wasn't easy. I struggled for a while, but I think what happened was that the moment my mind changed and I started realizing that this thing wasn't that difficult, that I just needed to give proper focus, I was able to start enjoying my time in IT compliance. And I cannot tell you what a huge blessing IT compliance ended up being for me. So I was able to switch to the EA role in GT Bank. When I left GT Bank in 2019, I went to InterSwitch where I met Wale. And in InterSwitch, I actually started out in IT service management, which somebody is going to ask, how are the two relating? Well, the best part of IT compliance is because I was able to learn so many things that was happening in IT department. So I could speak to everything within the IT department. So everything involves me in one form, shape, or way or the other. If I wasn't driving compliance, if I wasn't getting requirements, if I wasn't doing documentation, if I wasn't doing policies and procedures, if I wasn't checking some compliance to one thing or the other, I had to interact with people, I had to interact with processes, and all of that actually helped me a lot. So when I moved to InterSwitch, they were looking for somebody with some IT compliance. I feel like that role was not very defined at the time when I moved into InterSwitch, but I was able to speak my way through. And the moment I spoke my way through, within 1 year in InterSwitch, I was made the head of technology and operations governance. I stayed in InterSwitch for about 3.5 years before moving to Dubai, right? And again here, which is why I still thank God for that fact that he didn't listen to the prayer. Maybe like I said, I don't know if I was praying right or praying wrong, but whatever prayer that was prayed at that point in time, thank God he didn't listen and he allowed something else to go, another path to open up for me in IT compliance. Because when I moved to Dubai, I wasn't actually seeing a lot of IT compliance roles. I was seeing governance roles, but maybe much more senior position. I was seeing so many different things. And you know, when you move to a new country, one of the things that people don't know is that there's some expectation to have something called UAE experience or Canada experience or UK experience. All those things actually affect how you get a job, depending, right? So, but when I came here and I was seeing those IT governance roles, I was just, you know, a little bit, I was struggling a little bit, I would say. But I remember that I decided that I would apply for IT governance roles and I would apply for IT audit roles. And somebody will ask, why IT audit? You did IT compliance, you did IT enterprise architecture, you did IT service management, technology and operations governance. Now you're coming to IT audit. Yes, because in the IT compliance role, I was actually able to do some internal audits as well. And so that opened up my world for me. So if you're asking me, I've been working for the past 12 years and I've actually gone through all these different places in IT. And I'm sure that if something else comes up, I know that I still have relevant information to be able to fit into anywhere in the IT governance, compliance, audit space, even risk, even cybersecurity risk. I think I can transition into risk if I choose to. So yeah, that's been my journey for the last 12 years in the IT space, essentially.
Thank you. I like the point where you had to change your, adapt in terms of this is where I am now. Let me change my mind to learning and absorbing. And eventually it became something that opened the door for you. Thanks for the introduction. Like some people are looking for a background in engineering and background in all of those technical areas, but you have it, and it's almost like the opposite.
I wasn't interested. I wasn't interested.
All right, so our topic, we're trying to look at IT governance. So this topic actually came from some conversation and thought that I've had about how to really manage cyber risk. And that because we are in the age of technology, where technology actually drives everything, there's IT governance and there's compliance. And I'm trying to look at someone who has a very good experience in those two areas and their perspective on how this IT governance and compliance helps to manage cyber risk. And that's how we came about the topic. Now, from your experience, can you help with some kind of maybe introduction to what exactly is this IT governance? What is this IT compliance? For people that are probably hearing it for the first time, they've heard about IT, but what is governance in IT? Then they've heard about compliance and IT. Then what is compliance in IT? Is this something that you can help us understand and maybe link it to cyber risk?
Sure, thank you for asking. Because like you said, so many people don't know. And I think it's also because the way IT is structured, most of what people hear about is the coding part. You either have to be a developer, or you have to be in infrastructure or network. I think those are the three major things that people hear about. But behind these things, and before you can even have things like your infrastructure team or your networks team and all of that, to be able to deliver value, you actually need to have something called the IT governance team. So basically, IT governance is primarily responsible for defining the IT strategy of an organization. So, and that strategy that they're defining must actually meet the business goals. Because remember, the entire point of being in business is to make money, right? And you cannot have a business that does not have a solution that is driving that business. So where does IT come inside? IT comes in because you need a solution to be able to drive your business, to be able to get your revenue. But imagine if we are doing things anyhow. Tomorrow you wake up, today you do whatever you want. This other team is doing whatever you want. Networks is doing whatever they want. Everybody is just buying things, bringing things, and all of that. You will just have this sinkhole where things are just falling through the cracks, or sometimes even falling through into that sinkhole. So IT governance is the basic thing for IT governance is being able to define what the strategy of IT is going to be and how it's going to meet the business goals. So it's basically like a playbook for the technology department of any organization, and it is informing how technology decisions are made, how they are managed through the life cycle of the organization. And it also helps to make decisions that ensure that technology department is able to meet and deliver the objectives of the business consistently. Because again, the only reason why technology is existing, or your technology department is existing, is because of the need to meet the business needs. So starting from questions like, how can we run IT efficiently from the start? What kind of architecture, IT architectural landscape, IT architectural landscape do we need? What kind of infrastructure or software are we going to be use? What kind of frameworks are we going to adopt to help us to manage how we deliver and support our applications? How are we building an application, and how are we supporting the business? What is this business goal? What does business want to do? Is it better for us to buy a software for the business to meet this goal, or is it better for us to build something for them to meet this goal, right? And things like managing budgets, right? The budget for IT is also managed in the IT governance function, because you don't want IT to become a sinkhole or a cost center where everybody is just like, IT is just taking money and buying stuff and not using, for instance. So who is governing how IT is taking money from the business and how they're spending that money rather? It's in the IT governance function. And then finally, they also manage the risk, right? All of these together help IT form what IT governance is supposed to be doing. So now if I move to IT compliance, right? IT compliance is having a team of people that basically sanitize your environment, right? So imagine if you want to have a visitor coming and you need people to clear up everywhere, put everything, because that visitor that is coming to come and do some form of inspection, right? That is the kind of thing I would relate IT compliance to, right? So in compliance, we are responsible for ensuring that there's consistency across all our departments within IT. And this is achieved using documentation that acts as a set of rules, which we call policies and procedures essentially. And then these policies and procedures, you can get them from different places. You can get them from regulatory bodies, and you can decide by yourself as an organization that these are the standards, frameworks that I want to use. And some of those standards and frameworks, you have COBIT, you have ISO, PCI, those kind of things. And then also, we also do things based on best practices. So we try to ensure that if we take a baseline of similar organizations in our environment doing similar things to what we do, what are they doing with their technology? And we try to get some best practices from them. So that is where IT compliance ends the name. I'm sure if you have a compliance thing, they'll probably be the police of technology, which I don't like being called. But yeah, so IT compliance team is tasked with ensuring that the IT team is doing what is expected of them. And then the team responsible for ensuring the kind of frameworks that are actually used is IT governance. So in summary, IT governance is responsible for deciding the strategies that IT will use to achieve the goals to drive the business, while IT compliance is responsible for ensuring that IT is actually using those strategies and they're also meeting the necessary requirements of those strategies, of those frameworks and all of that.
Thanks a lot. I think I like that analogy of IT is just not existing. They are existing for a purpose. And it is the governance guys that help us to make sure that if we have, are we going to build a software or we should just buy it? Why build? Why not buy, you know? Sure. I think that decision needs to be made and it needs to be governed properly. Thank you for that explanation. Now, people have heard about IT governance and you have also explained what IT governance will do. From your understanding, what are those generally used IT governance framework that you are familiar with, or that if you want to maybe suggest to people that these are a few examples of IT governance, what are they?
Okay, so there are multiple frameworks out there, right? And it is actually not required for you to align to all the frameworks or all the standards. It actually depends on the organization, what the goals of the organization are, what kind of business that they are doing. It's usually what will determine what kind of standards or frameworks that you decide to imbibe. For instance, because I will have background in the technology, in financial organizations, and fintech organizations. I know that we had to, back then, CBN had something called the IT standard blueprint or something of that nature. And they had asked that every organization needed to align to that framework, to that blueprint. So in that blueprint, they had not said that, oh, you must do this or you must do that. They had actually given options. So for instance, they had said that, oh, if you want to if you want to align your IT strategy and align your IT strategy, then you should use like ITIL or I think COBIT or one of them for aligning your IT strategy. And we had some organizations that actually did both, right? There's nothing wrong in doing both, or there's nothing wrong in doing one or the other, okay? So you can have, I'm just trying to say that you can have regulation that forces you to actually decide which blueprint or framework to use. But some of the other frameworks that we have things like some frameworks that are used for solution delivery, delivery or service delivery, which is things around like project management and how you develop your applications. So we have a CMMI, CMMI is called the Capability Maturity Model Integration Framework, which is aimed for improving your performance and how you deliver applications. We have PM book, which is for project management. How do you manage projects? So that is the things that you have a project. You say you have a project governance framework, and this is how I want to manage projects in my organization and all of that, right? And you also had things like for service management. How are you managing service within your organization? You have things like the ITIL, you have ISO 20000, which is service management standard. You have things for business continuity, ISO 22301, and some other standards as well for business continuity. You have standards for risk management, for information security, right? You have PCI DSS for information security. You have ISO 27000. PCI DSS is for card. If you're processing card payments in your organization, then you need to be certified to PCI DSS. You have ISO 27001, which is just general practices of how to manage IT within, manage information security within your organization. You have some things around for cloud computing. So CBN was actually adding the more standards and frameworks that came, depending on what the architectural landscape was at that point in time, they would give suggestions to say, do this or do that. But the most common ones that I think people would have heard about is like things like COBIT 2019, COBIT 2019, which is actually helping to align your IT strategy with your processes. Then you have ITIL, which is basically how do you manage service within your organization. You have things like PCI DSS, which is a standard, not a framework. But as long as you're processing card, you have the expectation that you need to meet that one. You have something called TOGAF. TOGAF is the open group architecture framework that actually helps the IT governance team to be able to think up the strategies and the things that they need to be able to have proper overview of how technology is going to run, essentially. So that is where you have some people called enterprise architects. Those are the kind of frameworks that they use to drive the architecture of the enterprise. And yeah, then you have the PM book. That's the project management one that helps you to define how projects are governed within your organization. So you may have heard one or two of these. And you have ISO. ISO is a standard, not a framework though. You have ISO, different forms of ISO, 20000, 27001, 22301, 32000, so many thousands of them. So, but yeah, these are the more common ones that I think people would have had some relation with in one way or the other.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thank you for mentioning that CBN IT blueprint. I've gone online to also put a link there. If you are in IT, any area in IT, so what CBN has done, they've developed or identified different IT standards or frameworks cutting across a different spectrum of technology. It could be service management, it could be information security, it could be cloud security, it could be business continuity, and they have listed them there. What you can do as a professional is to go look at that list. It's either you want to, if you are in an organization, you want to encourage your organization to adopt. If you are in financial services, it is mandatory. Yeah. But if you are in other sector, you can actually look at it and see the one you can use to improve yourself. And I know there was a time CBN actually was, they will go around to check who is complying, and they have this year we're going to look at XYZ, and if you're a professional, it will be a lot of help for you. Now, going into one of the apropos we had before the session was, then we used to say, why is it just this difficult? So we were trying to understand, why can't we just get something We ask you to give us this, you can't give us this. You have, why is this woman just difficult like this? Now, I understand that it is actually based on, sometimes it's based on not understanding one another as either risk or cybersecurity or IT. I want you to help especially cybersecurity professionals, how they should manage and relate with the IT team. What have you seen that you think it is missing from cyber professionals when they are relating with IT? And how can they improve that?
Okay, so for this question, because like when you said, why am I being difficult? I think when I look back at it now, I just realized that we had different perspectives. And somewhere at the back of our mind, the objective was similar. But, it is easy to get caught up in, oh, I am the IT compliance person, you are the risk person, your own side is different, my own side is different. When in reality, for IT compliance, we carry an element of cyber risk with us, right? And if we are actually being very honest, in IT governance, one of the key stakeholders for us to even be able to do all these fantastic things that we want to do in IT governance, one of the key stakeholders is actually the cybersecurity risk team as well, right? So if we go back to what both teams are supposed to be doing, IT governance is supposed to be, having this framework, trying to align IT with the business, and compliance team is trying to just like adhere to the laws and to the regulations and ensure that, people are doing what they're supposed to do within IT. And on this other hand, you have cyber risk that is saying that, oh, these are the potential threats in our environment. These are the things that are going to happen if we don't do what we're supposed to do. Both teams are right in their own way, in what their objective is. They are both right. However, I feel that now I'm seeing that there should have been more of a symbiotic relationship between us back then, based on what I know now. Because at the end of the day, the point is to actually align with what the organization wants to do. So there was really no need for standoffs, right? But I think it's also because there's this thing where one person feels that, this one department feels like what they're doing is more important than what the other department is doing. And so because we had all of those discussions going on, sometimes I think we were taking our eyes off what does the business need at this particular point in time. How can we drive what the business goals are at this particular point in time? So if at the end, if for instance, cyber risk wants to do something and this thing that they want to do is going to impact on the customer's experience, right? As an IT compliance person and an IT governance person, I'm likely to say, oh no, this thing you want to do, this MFA that you want to put, MFA is multi-factor authentication, this MFA that you want to put at this point in time in this application is probably going to impact our customers. It's going to cause them to maybe go for other people's applications. They won't want to use our application, something of that nature. Rather than going back and forth and trying to say, no, you have to put it because MFA is the right thing to do and all of that. We know you want to secure, but we cannot be so secure that people are now impacted, our customers are now impacted, because we need the revenue from the customers, right? At the same time, as IT compliance, I cannot be fighting you, the risk team or the cyber risk team, to say, oh no, this thing is not part of my checklist, is not part of this. You need to, the security is too much and all of that. What I think would have been the best way for us to collaborate would have been for us to look at, so we want to implement MFA right now. How do we go about it? Let us go to the business. Dear business, what do you think about this? How can we, what are your customers saying? Because the voice of the customer is also very, very, very important. And I think it's something that cyber risk and IT compliance and people in IT in general sometimes miss out on. So if you go to the business and you say, what are you seeing now? What is the voice of the customer right now? And you get that feedback. For it, we can decide to say, okay, you know what? We know MFA is very important. And we also know that customers' experience is very important. How can we find a way to see how to implement this over this period of time that is not going to impact so much on the customers? Maybe we can use that period as compliance to be giving some form of awareness, giving some form of awareness to the business to say, take this to your customers. Maybe that's what we can be doing, give them more awareness, and then try to get people on board, have a roadmap that could have taken us to where we're supposed to go, right? So for me, the missing link a lot of times between cyber and IT is that there is no, there's not enough focus on what the end game is. And a lot of times also, there's also that thing where IT feels like, Rick, you just want to come and poke news. You just want to come and look for something that is not lost. We also carry that impression in our mind. So we try to contain a lot of things, like keep a lot of things away from prying eyes. But I think if we are being a little bit honest, and if we were opening up a number of things and genuinely just asking that, how can we collaborate on this thing? How can we make this thing better? At the end of the day, we want to serve our organization. We want the organization to make revenue. We want our customers to be safe, but we also want them to have a good experience. When we take all these things into consideration, we are able to, as in logically analyze what the risk is at that particular point in time and create a roadmap for how we can move forward. And what I'm learning now in old age is that if something is not working, we can always come back. But I also think that part of our challenge in cyber risk and IT compliance is that we want to get it right the first time. So some of these
that's the slogan of the organization.
They
get it right the first time.
Yes, get it right the first time. But now when you look at things like agile, that's telling you that start from where you are.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, start from where you are. Do it in bits. What can you deliver at this particular point in time? Deliver it. There's nothing wrong with having a roadmap. The most important thing is not to stop, is to keep moving, right? So if we keep coming back to the table to say, this thing we are doing, are we progressing? Are we not? Are we having honest conversations where nobody is pointing fingers at the other person and all of that? And yes, this looks very like, oh, your environment needs to be very chill for this to happen. But I don't think so. I think a three-way discussion or a two-way discussion, three-way discussion with the business or two-way discussion between IT and IT compliance, IT governance, and cyber risk can actually help. Because at the end of the day, like I was saying earlier, in IT governance, anything that we are doing carries element of risk already. So if we don't have the cyber risk in there as our stakeholders to say, this is what we want to do. What do you guys think? Should we move forward? And if IT risk is being cyber risk is being very honest and saying that, you know what, I know you want to do this thing, but I don't think this is the best way. Like that, having that open dialogue, I think without any bias, because we really need to remove the bias, I think we will do much, much more good in securing our organizations than we do now.
Thank you. I like that point of the voice of the customer. So it is not the IT voice, it is not the cyber voice, but the voice of the customer should actually, and the customer could be our regulator, it could be the person paying us money. So we need to all of those and really have a three-way discussion, because if that doesn't happen, if one is coming and say, go and do this, the other is likely to say, why are you telling me to go and do something, And yeah, thanks for that thought. And this question is very important from the perspective that if you are in cyber, it is not just about sending a report and say, implement something. You need to get to understand if they implement this thing, can it actually cause service failure? And IT is the person that they would now be asking, what did you do? IT will say, I said I should do something.
Incident reports.
All right. So from your experience, so the next question is around, now, I think I like the fact that you have identified that part of your pillars is also cyber risk. How do you think IT governance and IT compliance helps organization? How do you think IT compliance and governance help the organization to manage their cyber risk?
Yeah, so like we said, since cyber risk is a key stakeholder for us, and even in IT compliance, we already have elements of security that we have to carry. I think it is important in IT governance to actually have that that understanding of what the similarities are in what we are trying to do. So both of us, both cyber risk and IT governance and compliance, we are trying to reduce risk, right? Governance and compliance are trying to reduce regulatory risk. Cyber is trying to reduce cyber threats, for instance, right? Both of us, our entire objective is that we want to protect organizations' assets. We want to protect our organization's reputation. We want to enable business continuity. We want to enable resilience. We want to ensure that we are enforcing our policies and our procedures. And when it's not working for us, we want to be able to go back to the drawing board and be able to fix it or iterate it so that it can do what it needs to do, right? So most of what we are doing, there's so much similarities in what we are doing already. And so for me, I feel that one of the things is that when we see what kind of business our organization is trying to do, whether it is in terms of the frameworks or the kind of IT landscape or the kind of software programming, whatever it is that we are trying to take on at that particular point in time, I think it is important to hear the voice of the cyber risk team from an IT compliance and governance perspective. So whether we are trying to move into, like for instance, when DevOps first came out, I'm not sure. I think as IT governance, I would say, oh, this is a new territory. This is a new way of doing things. I'm not sure how much consideration we took from the cybersecurity perspective to say what are actually the risks of us running this in our environment, seeing that we already have all these other applications, seeing that we already use all these other tools and all of that. If we want to work hand in hand to move the organization with cyber risk, then something as simple as or as complex as trying to take on board a new kind of software, a new kind of architecture, and all of that, we really need to ensure that we are asking our cyber risk stakeholders that, what do you guys think? Okay, so for me, I think that is what we need to do at every point in time. We're asking, what do we need at this point in time? How can we move it forward? If we are seeing blockers, we are collaborating with the cyber risk team to say, okay, because you have mentioned that these are the risks of what I'm doing, how about I get mitigating controls? I can go back within IT and get with and discuss with the team to say, okay, how can we give some mitigating controls so that we can actually give some comfort to the cyber risk team that we're not trying to, expose our environment to threats and to vulnerabilities. So having those conversations for me, I feel are some of the things. There's a lot of conversation and action that needs to be taken. So I would say discuss, have that discuss, have a roadmap, have a plan, implement that plan. If anything is not working, come back to the drawing board. And then I think that is also part of why we have things like risk acceptance, right? Because I should be able to say that even if my cyber risk team is not agreeing with me or what I want to do at this point in time, how about I accept the risk because I have mitigating controls? And the cyber risk team is not going to be trying to be a blocker to say, no, you have to do this, you have to do this now. If you don't do it, all that conversation can be moved and be more structured using what we already have in play, like risk acceptance, like risk methodologies, and performing risk assessments and agreeing that this is how we are going to mitigate the risk over time. And I also think that one of the things that also happens now in retrospect is that sometimes we forget the risk assessments that have been done for us for certain things. And then we want to push things forward in the IT department. And many times those things that you have, identified in cyber risk actually do come back. And because we have forgotten, we did an exercise, like we did a risk assessment exercise, and we've agreed on the mitigation, we've agreed everything, but we just packaged that document and kept it somewhere. Because we tend to do that, sometimes the cyber risk still actually presents themselves. So if we're being honest in IT as well, I think we need to also look at those risk assessments that are done, those documentations that we have kept. We actually need to look at making them a going, I think it's going concern that's called, like continuous improvement, trying to make it better, trying to implement those things, and not just doing it as part of one checklist that is fixed. Did we ask risk? Yes, we asked risk. We asked risk. What the risk say? They said X. I said, okay, let's move ahead. We asked, at least we asked them and we check it and we keep it. Rather than checking and keeping, we actually incorporate it daily into what we do, into our operations, and see how to, make it better. So I think that is some of the ways I think that IT governance and compliance can actually help our organization to manage their cyber risk.
Thank you so much. I like the fact that you brought out a risk assessment. One of the things I have seen lately is that in the past, people think the risk assessment belongs to the risk managers. So the risk management team should own the risk. So they are not the people, not only IT, different parts of the business, they don't own their own risk. If I was to be the CEO, part of the things you would tell me when you are telling me you are making money, you also tell me your risk. If I was going to, because if you keep your risk register close to you, you are likely to, it won't be just an exercise of taking the bus. It will be an exercise that you are living through the activities that have been mentioned. Thanks a lot. Now, you've made IT governance and IT compliance so attractive, to be honest. I think the part that caught me attention mostly was that IT is not just, we're not just buying a laptop that can process something at a speed of light. We are buying this laptop because the business actually requires that type of laptop.
Yes.
And so with this attractiveness that you have painted IT governance, some people are thinking maybe IT governance is a pathway for me to go. If you would need to advise those kind of people who are thinking IT compliance or IT governance, how do you think they can start that journey?
Well, as I said in my own case, they literally just threw me inside, right? So I was basically learning on the job for like the first 12 to 18 months. I think I did so much learning on the job. But if I'm going to answer your question, I'll answer it on two ways, right? First, I will talk about those that are newbies. If you're a newbie that wants to go into IT compliance and go into IT governance, I mean, it's a very integral point of IT. The learning is so much and it pays over time. However, the point of entry, if you're a newbie, even if you don't have any IT background, the cost of entry can actually be quite low, in the sense that what you really need to do is have a passion for IT. You're not coding. If in case they are thinking, oh, what is the technical part of it? You are not coding, right? However, IT compliance requires you to have basic fundamental IT knowledge, which you can get by, I think there's some security plus, or there's some like basic certifications that you can start with. See, let me tell you, here in the UAE, I worked with a lady, and honestly, she blows my mind every time I have conversations with her. And she used to tell me then, because she's from India, she used to tell me that if I didn't even know what a laptop was, because she came from a commercial background, like pure commercial background. And she said, I didn't know what IT was, but I had to learn, go for trainings to say, what is the kind of training she had to go for in the beginning stages was things like, what is a computer? How does a computer work? very basic trainings, but she was able to have a fulfilling career over 15 years in the IT audit, IT governance space. There's nothing you ask her about IT that she cannot respond to. But it is interesting to note that she doesn't know anything deep. You cannot give her code and she would, same like me, I will not be able to read a lot of code for you. But you need, if you're a newbie coming into this, you need to have a passion for IT. You need to understand what IT is, how IT works at the very minimum. And as a newbie, I will not lie, I will not tell you to go and do certification, right? Wale has encouraged you to have a plan for yourself. For me, if you're a newbie, in that plan, what you should have, if you're going to do certifications at all, should be certifications that have classroom training, if you can afford it, and that are able to show you at the very fundamental level what IT and what security is. Once you are able to do that, in fact, let me tell you something that happened in my first year in GT Bank, in my first 2 years in GT Bank. So we were sent on a training, and in that training, I think it was some ethical hacking training or something of that nature. So when we went for the training, apparently somehow I was first in the class, right? I was able to break some code, do some ethical hacking. And then the guy had said, so you have a choice of a prize. We can either pay for you to go and do certified ethical hacker exam. We can give you a voucher for that. Or we can give you a new Samsung Galaxy, something that back then. This is 2014-ish. Can you guess which one I went with? Anybody just wants to take a wild guess? I chose the phone. My boss was not happy with me at all. He's like, how can you go and they give you and you went and you chose phone? I chose the phone. I didn't want to do the certified ethical hacker. I didn't think I had enough knowledge at that time. And I felt it would have required me to immerse myself too much in trying to understand certain kind of principles that I didn't know then. But the interesting thing is that when I went to go and write my CISA was a breeze for me. CISA is Certified Information Security Systems Auditor exam. It was a breeze for me because I already had 4 years of experience working, learning, doing all those things. So any question I see, I could easily relate it to my environment. And I got a very good score in CISA. So what am I saying? If you're a newbie, have a passion. Don't rush to do certification, but have a plan for yourself. And in that plan, any certification that you want to do, let it be the very basic certification that gives you an overview of what IT is. Now, if you are experienced, I feel like you are the most blessed to be in IT governance or in IT compliance. If you have any background in, especially if you have a background already in IT, right? And the reason why I say this is because IT governance and IT compliance rules are things that you're already doing in your day-to-day operations. So in IT governance, it's a lot of strategic thinking because you're thinking for the future of your application of IT. And in that, when I try to juxtapose it, if you're an operations person, like if you're in the network team or in the applications development team and all of that, you're already doing some form of strategizing every day. Even if it is you're doing your stand-up meetings, whatever conversations you're having or how you're architecting, there's a form of strategy that is already going in. So you have an advantage, right? And for you to go into IT governance and compliance, is you just saying that, okay, I want to switch from wearing an operations cap right now, and I want to think more strategically. That's it. And if you're able to do that, you can get into you can easily get into IT governance and compliance rules. And you will just know that what you're going to do there is a subset of what you are already doing with a sprinkle of strategy, essentially. So for people that are not newbies, I think the point of entry is also very good. If you decide that you want to switch careers, it's a good place to go. And fun fact, many of the people that I know that were in governance roles actually do go on to become CIOs of organizations, right? You have so if you're doing risk, most times I think you end up being like a CISO or a CRO, But for IT governance, you can actually go ahead and actually become a CIO, because at that level, at that C-suite level, it's basically strategy, right? So if you ask me, for anybody, whether newbie or experienced, just have passion for what you're doing, have an understanding, don't rush to do certifications. If you can hold off on certifications, like those big name certifications, if you can hold off on them for a while, please do. But gain experience. Oh my God, gain experience. Drink from everybody around you. Take as much experience as you can. In fact, let me just give another story here. Part of the things that I have done when I was in IT compliance role, I remember that there was one time that we had this issue with the SSL certificate, and it was going to expire. And the infra team, so many servers were going to be affected. And at that point in time, they were saying that, oh, we may not be able to finish. They were trying to prioritize and all of that. I was able to roll my sleeves. I asked them, please, how do you do this certificate thing? And the guy showed me, this is what you do. You click here, you do that, that. It was to apply the certificate. I said, it is fine. Can I sit with you guys? And then you guys log into the servers for me, and I will do the certificate. I will show you. If it is fine, then you go take me to the next server, and I can help to fix this issue for you. And I actually sat there and I did that. I didn't have access to anything. They were the ones logging on for me, but I gained knowledge from them that at that point in time, right? Another time in a different audit, I usually have to liaise with the external auditors. External auditors mean like the Big Four, the PwC, the Deloitte, CBN auditors. I have to be the one that interfaces with them, because I was responsible for providing them with all our documentation, policies, processes, evidences, those kind of things, right? Because in a compliance role, you have to adhere to regulations. So when they come for those inspections, it's IT compliance that they're coming to meet, right? So in one of those audits, one of those days, I had gone to go and meet one of the database guys, and I was saying, oh, I really need you to pull this out for me. And he really literally went off on me. He was maybe very overwhelmed, and then he went off on me. He was like, oh, you're always disturbing, you don't do anything. He really, really gave me a talking to, and I was pained. I was so pained that I went, because I'd already done a database foundation training. And I was like, can I write the script for this database and give it to this person so that they're not having to think about anything? And I sat down, I wrote the script. When the guy was in a good mood, I went to him, I said, can you please check the script if it's fine? He looked at it, he said, it's fine. I said, can you run it? He ran it, he gave the output. I said, no problem. And thankfully, then in the bank, we had access to some read-only servers. We didn't have access to production environment, but we had access to servers that maybe had data off from one day before. I went by myself. I gave this script. I told them, everybody, this is what I want to do. And I went and I run the script. For like 2 years, every time those auditors came, once it came to those lists that they were looking for, I just run my script and give it to them. I didn't have to go back to that guy. So again, what is your interest? You have to gain a lot of knowledge on your way in the course of your journey. But I promise you one thing, like I've mentioned earlier, I started with IT compliance. I've worked in EA. I've worked in in IT service management, in technology operations governance, and now I'm an internal auditor. IT compliance and governance will take you places. I can give you that assurance. As long as your mind is open, it will take you places.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think I would look out for question, or maybe our last question. Our last question is around security and compliance. And usually people will say, once I'm secure, why are you bothering me about compliance? Or once I'm compliant, why are you bothering me about security? So what is your view around that mindset of security compliance?
Well, Wale, I feel like there's no assumption in compliance or in security. you are only as secure as the last attack or as the last issue or bulletin that has been released. You are only as secure as that, right? So because we don't know what the hackers are doing, we don't know what the bad guys are doing. So really, it's not one or the other. Though I will also say that compliance is not equal to security and security is not equal to compliance, right? Because in compliance, you're trying to comply, you're trying to check to be sure that you're trying to check to be sure that you are meeting what is already written for you. It is in your policies, in your procedures. You're trying to ensure that the strategies, everything is being followed, right? However, you can be fully compliant and you can still be vulnerable, right? Meanwhile, in security, you are especially trying to, secure your systems. You're trying to secure your infrastructure. You're trying to ensure that, bad guys are not able to come inside and all of that. But if bad guys are not able to come inside, does not also mean that you are compliant. So at the end of the day, we need to have like a more balanced view where we need to understand that both security and compliance are complementing each other. There will be a time where security needs to trump compliance, and you can use things like your risk acceptance to explain why. And there are times when compliance will need to trump security because you are thinking about things like, oh, how is this affecting my customers? How is this affecting the business, essentially? I think security and compliance is dependent at what is obtainable at that point in time, because you cannot even make a decision for the future, too much into the future. You have to think that this is where we are at. Which one should we go with? And everybody needs to be able to listen and understand each other's part of the discourse and then give their opinions. And based on that opinion, then we can take more informed decision going forward. And like I was saying earlier, there needs to be a plan, because if at any point in time your security exposure is too much, I mean, we don't want a situation whereby because we don't want to do too much security, then people are now abusing our systems and frauds are happening and all of that. We don't want that. You also don't want a situation whereby your system is so tight that people are like, this thing is giving me a headache. I'd rather go for your competitor that is not giving me this much headache, right? So I think I would say it depends on what is required at that point in time. And again, voice of customer, voice of business, what is needed, what is required, and making more informed decisions from both parties.
Thank you. I think I got the best answer where you mentioned that it is actually complementary. It is not either this or this. It is that both of them must work hand in hand. Thank you so much, Ify. I think we've covered all of our questions that I have prepared, and I will just run through the last few 1 or 2 minutes, and then if you have any question based on our conversation today, please drop it in the chat and I will read it out, or if you can pick it up, and then we will be done I think we should be done in the next 5 minutes. Yeah, we should be done in the next 5 minutes. So we try to have a weekly masterclass. To be honest, we've had only 2. The idea is to bring in a subject matter expert, pick a topic, and then treat that topic. For instance, we have done identity and access management. I took the second one, also identity and access management, using a multi-framework approach to implement an identity and access management program in the organization. We should have another, but it depends on 2 things. One, a facilitator who is willing to take a class, and the second is audience. To be honest, I can get facilitator, right? But I'm not sure of the audience, and I don't want to bring somebody and I'm finding only 1 or 2 people on the call. So that's why I haven't really pushed this particular program very well. The other items on the right-hand side are, you probably must have noticed on our LinkedIn page, we have some publications of cybersecurity tips, just simple topic, and with one of us that is actually developing those material. It is one way for you to demonstrate or expand your knowledge. So some people are not working in cyber, but they are interested in cyber. And I think some of these programs is actually an opportunity for you to get your foot in the door. You know, reading about some topics in cybersecurity, MFA, what exactly is MFA? People know MFA as something you know, something you have, something you, who you are. But it's more than that. By reading, you'll be able to find the more things around about who you are. Some of us cannot access, you know, you are in a particular part of the country or the world, and you can't access some websites. That is about a multi-factor authentication. They have probably looked at it and say, an IP from this particular area, you should not. I remember one time, I saw some children's materials, and I liked it. And I wanted to, it was in the US, and I wanted to access it. Because I was in Nigeria, I couldn't access it. Then when I traveled to the US, I was able to access it. And because I accessed it from the US and I installed it from the US, when I go back to Nigeria, it didn't block me. So that is a form of MFA. Because of where you are, they have now locked it up. So by reading, you can actually learn and also help other people to learn. I have some, so yeah, if you are interested, you can help us build this into a program. For instance, we are looking for materials on secure family tips. Parents buy mobile phone and give their children the phone. Don't disturb me, just be working with the iPhone or whatever. And the children are looking at it, and they are clicking on different links. In fact, yesterday, or no, 2 days ago, I saw a post on social media. It says that there's a guy, they put his name there. They said the guy installs CCTV for especially female, right, clients. She installs CCTV for female, and then she will hold on to the password, or they will not change the password. So she will keep the password and start accessing, you know, private moments of those people, and be doing a screenshot and be keeping those records. Now, a cybersecurity professional will know that you need to change your default password. Most people don't know. Some of your phones have default identities that they don't change. Your Wi-Fi, your internet routers, all of them, they have default identity. Now, the CCTV of a thing, people just want to use it. They just see that my CCTV is working and they moved on, forgetting that these are confidential information that a third party is now having access to, and it can be traumatizing that somebody is watching you when you are not even aware of it. So these are some of the things that we want to develop: secure family tips, secure written stories, you know, things that have happened, like this story that I just mentioned now. Somebody can develop it into a story and use that to communicate and help other people to understand cybersecurity. I'll come to the question. The last thing is, yeah, so I can boldly say that first quarter, we have all green. We've been able to invite, at least we have 2 women. We have 2 women. So it is not a man's world. So we have had 6 sessions. First quarter, I can take this off in my own group. So in my own growth plan, this is there that I must have this session. So I would then develop the new quarter, reaching out. I've actually reached out to one other speaker for the month of April. So I'm waiting for a feedback. And this, again, is to help you, you know, again, I'm doing this, I'm building my own brand. I'm also telling you that these are the things you need to do for yourself. Don't just let the year be going like that. Don't let it go by. Try and put something in the year. Put something that you have done for first quarter. Let it ring a bell. Even when you go for an interview, let it. And if you are not even in an interview, use it to develop yourself, as Ify has said, because you will need it in time to come. So questions here. If there are questions, so one is that, as regarding the time limit of external testing team, penetration testing, why is it always short? Why is the time always short? We have like 2 minutes to go. So if you can just help me look at the question and just answer
I think for this one, I think because external penetration testing is a timed activity. It's a paid service in most cases. So when they come, they're not coming to, they're coming for sample based, depending on the kind of engagement that you have agreed in your organization. So it's possibly why this is short, but there's also the part where there's the expectation that internally you're doing your own penetration testing, and it should always be much more richer than whatever the external guy is coming to come and give to you. So yeah, I think it's just dependent on what your organization is trying to achieve at that point in time, and they paid for this service. So they will determine how long it will take for them to do, which is why it may look like it's always short. Okay.
You can go
Well,
to
I
the
think
next
the
one.
next
Can just
one,
continue. Just continue to the next question.
next one is for you, that you
Yeah,
should share the LinkedIn
yeah, I
paper
will
for
do that now.
CSMG. Right. And then I have Aisha is asking if how she can merge IT control into your expertise. Aisha, you're already an internal control and compliance specialist, so you already have plenty leg, like your leg is already up. So for me, all I would just advise is that you need to start looking at those IT related controls. You know, their IT frameworks, all those ISO frameworks, and which you should be familiar with since you're already doing some things around internal control. Try to get involved into whatever it is discussions they're having around IT controls. What are the checklists? Look at them and see how you can add value by understanding what it means. So if in IT control, they're saying, for instance, Wale was mentioning MFA, multi-factor authentication, and they're saying stuff like this multi-factor authentication enabled in that environment. So you should be able to understand what multi-factor authentication is. So if you get those kind of checklists, you can just do like a run through to try and get a bit more understanding into what they are saying. And then you can look at the ones that you can use, things like user access controls, which is where MFA comes in, user access controls, incident changes. There are some cheap ones that you can just use even as an internal control person, and you can ask this question. So if you just do a little bit of research, I think you will be able to get feedback on that. So when okay, Femi, thank you. Israel is asking when testing a team test and give their feedback. I was at that the time and resting time are usually shorter. Some just give only one retesting section. Can you help speak us to why this is usually short? Okay. Israel, are you asking that when a team, I think you're talking about user acceptance tests, and they said when they give their feedback, I was at the time and resting time are usually shorter. Some just give only one retesting section. So if a tester is only going to give you something to retest, you only need to retest some kind, okay, so it depends on the kind of testing that you are doing. If a testing requires that a part of that test can function independently of the rest of the application, some people just do something called a unit testing at that particular point in time. But if that particular application requires that component to be able to run, then you still have to do a full test for that application. I don't know whether you're able to get what I'm saying. So sometimes a unit testing is done because that function can work independently of the application. But if you require to be able to see how that unit is able to function in the whole application, then you need to do a full application test. So it is likely why they are returning only the part that failed. They are probably returning that as part of unit testing. Okay. Yeah. So I think that's.
Thank you so much, Ify. Thank you. I think testing is because it's quite expensive, so you can't waste a lot of time. If you already mentioned that it's a paid service, so if your organization can pay money, they will wait. Sometimes these testings are in dollars, and if you can imagine somebody spending hours, 4 hours, and maybe 1 hour is $1,000. So it's a lot of money. But I hope that the questions were answered, and again, you can reach out to Ify on LinkedIn, and we'll be able to get more context if you want more. Some organizations will agree the number of retesting they need before engagement. Okay, thank you Femi for that thought. All right, I think we have come to the end of today's session, and Ify, thank you so much. I appreciate your your time and also your insight. I really
Thank
gain a
you
lot
so
from
much.
I really gain a lot from the perspective of IT governance, and it helps the cyber security guys to be able to know that IT governance is not just there. They actually are interested in the well-being of the organization. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We will see again for our next edition, which is coming up, or it should be on the, let me see the date now. It should be on the 5th, on the 5th of April. Yeah, on the 5th of April. So that's a new quarter. And I hope that you were able to, do something for the first quarter. The year is running, and it is what you do in those months that will count. And I encourage you, the cybersecurity growth plan is on the LinkedIn page. You can download it and modify it to help you develop yourself. Thank you, and till we see again. Keep learning, keep sharing, and keep connecting. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.